Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Authentic Relationships series. This is a special series for the month of September on passionate pursuits. And what we're doing with this series is really having conversations that center around courageous truths, radical honesty, and revolutionary love. Because I have this deeply held belief that it is in relationship, in real, honest, genuine relationship, where we can fully actualize ourselves back into our wholeness. So today I have a very special guest. Their name is Jaesic Wade. They are a University of Michigan and Academy for Coaching Excellence graduate. They're a blogger, life coach, peer support specialist, and a DEI practitioner as an accessibility and inclusion consultant and coach. In 2021, it founded its own coaching company, Queer Culture Coaching, so it could play a role in shifting culture from the top down and bottom up. The cornerstone of all the work Jaesic does has been in empowering people to share their stories, of course, which I love, and meet people where they are so that new understanding and acceptance is possible. Jaesic is honored to be sharing their own stories so that it might empower others here with Bridget Querns on Passionate Pursuits. So welcome, Jaesic.
Thank you so much for having me, Bridget.
Thank you. I'm just thrilled about this, and I'm really excited to take this conversation in, I guess, what would be a little bit of a different direction than what people might expect when we say authentic relationships. So you and I had talked previously, and I just really treasured our conversation that kind of focused on loving self first and remembering self in order to become that love that we're earnestly seeking in relationship. So tell me about what that's looked like for you.
Oh boy. Well, it's been a lot of learning the same lesson a million times over. I can even just like jump into the philosophy I mentioned
Yeah.
in our last little like pre-interview interview. Because it's really helped me quantify and qualify my experience and keep me sane through the process, and has helped me solidify a sense of self as I've developed through intimate relationships, through friendships, through family relationships. Where so I have this visual of a coil, and after we talked about it, I realized, oh, it's stalagmite and stalactites
Mhm.
kind of meeting each other and finding that reflection. But I'll start with the coil. So as we're going through circumstances that I believe the universe wants us to go through to teach us lessons on how to take care of ourselves and how to be our best keepers and advocates. I have been on this life journey in several different ways. So there's several different coils. But in particular, this one coil I feel like I've gone through with intimate relationships has echoed out into every other aspect of my life. And as I've been developing and going through this coil where I'm like in a certain circumstance, I find the pattern. I'm like, oh, never that again. And then I go around in the same like the same coil. It's the same lesson, but different circumstances. And it looks different every single time I go around. And I'm like, oh, never again, never again, never again. And I still make these decisions unconsciously until there comes a point of a threshold. And I would guess if you want a different visual, like a mountaintop with some snow at the very tippy top, right? So like the mountain's kind of bare until you get to the certain threshold, and then the snow comes on. And at this threshold, I'm able to look down and see, oh, I've been in this cycle. I've been through different circumstances, but it's been this single time. And so after that threshold, I recognize, okay, this is the hardest part of the journey, or maybe not the hardest part, but certainly a new perspective, right? Of going through the same lesson and different circumstances, but being aware, being awake
Mm.
to the different circumstances equaling the same lesson, essentially. And I'm like, okay, no, I know I've been here before, and I might falter. I might still go around the coil a couple times, and I might still make mistakes, but I'm aware consciously of what those mistakes are. And I'm actively choosing different circumstances and choosing actions that keep me away from having to learn the same lesson over again. And then suddenly I'm at the top of the coil, and I look down, I'm like, wow, that was a lot of work. And the first couple times maybe I've been through this in different ways, it was hard to not beat myself up about it.
Mm.
Because it's like, wow, I'm such a failure. I've had to learn this lesson how many times out of it. But now I see it as a true testament of my strength, my endurance, tenacity, like all those qualities that keep me going in life. Um, and we can touch on resilience. I have a whole thing on that too. But to be at the top of the coil and then suddenly I look up and there's a new coil
Mm.
and it starts small, but it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is when, as I mentioned before with you, where we have the opportunity to build skill and muscle in this new cycle, this new pattern that serves us first. My friend Ivan Potter Rose taught me that you have to be selfish to be selfless. Um,
Ooh.
like you have to, and friend and like mentor and coach. I love this human. He's amazing. But like you have to be selfish. You have to put yourself first. And we've heard that analogy of fill your cup. Fill your cup or you can't pour out of anything. Like that's in existence for a reason. That exists for a
Yeah.
reason. So, um, understanding like, oh, if I don't serve myself first, I'm never going to be able to love others the way that I want to love them because I'm always doing it at a cost of my own health, at the cost of my own being, at the cost of me basically losing my sense of self. I've seen it. That's that big coil that I just came out of, losing my sense of self. So as I go up in this new coil and I'm consciously aware, I'm fully awake, I'm fully engaged. I'm like, all right, universe, bring it on. Like, I know what I need to do now. Um, it's been a really beautiful development and beautiful to witness myself grow in this way where because I am loving myself first, because I am choosing my well-being first, I have capacity, I have the stamina, I have the just ability to love others in a way that I truly want to instead of, scraping at the bottom of the reserves barrel. So that was a whole rant. But
It was
um
so good.
well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, what I was thinking was, um, I know that one of the cycles that I mean, okay, I'm almost 40. So just so we have some context here, you're going to be bringing up new awareness of these cycles and patterns through your whole entire life. These
Absolutely.
are these are patterns that you may or may not have been ingrained with before you were even conscious that you were being ingrained with them. So during your formative childhood years, you're taking in all of these inputs and they're becoming part of the fabric of your reality. This is like your operating system. So I mean, definitely don't beat yourself up when you're like, oh my God, that program I'm running sucks. Like, what am I doing? Like, I mean,
Love that.
I'll use a self example first. One of the things we talked about was I really, really thought that based upon the relationships that I'd observed, that anxiety and that like butterfly feeling, but people say butterflies, but it was more like upset stomach feeling for me, but that was part of what I should feel when I was in love.
Yep.
That was integral to it was like being all dysregulated and discombobulated, and that's what love feels like. And I patterned my whole love life up until now, up until recently, off of that, and didn't know any better. So yeah, just a lesson in don't beat yourself up, be kind and gentle with yourself. And notice that when you recognize one of these patterns, I mean, my God, like cheer for yourself, give yourself like
Yes.
pause, recognize all the work that you've done to get to the place where you're aware of them.
Mhm.
You don't have to immediately go and disassemble everything because of that. But oh my gosh, what a huge accomplishment to find awareness of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is. I'm glad you brought up celebration because you need to celebrate the small and big things. You need to. Or I think honestly, when we don't, we're more likely and at risk to repeat. the thing that we don't want to repeat because we didn't
Yes.
take time and have that pause and recognize and internalize, oh my God, I did it. Like I did something to get myself out of this cycle.
Yeah.
I've absolutely come to that point finally where I'm like, I I've had situations pop up where I'm like, oh, I see what's happening. Literally laughed out loud to myself. We're like, this is so funny. I can't believe I'm in a situation again. And now I get to not repeat the same result. Like I see it so clearly. And I offered you that example of my recent like love interest, I guess we can call it, where I was so excited to pursue this connection and it felt right in so many ways. But because it came to a point where he and I couldn't, I don't know, we weren't fully aligned essentially on what we
Yeah.
wanted and where
Mm.
we could be. And instead of me parsing myself out into sections and shoving myself into the mold that fit what he saw um would be healthy for him, I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna risk my nervous system for this. I'm not gonna put myself like my future Jaesic self at risk of further harm when I know this is probably never going to happen in the way that I desire. So let's just be friends because I value you as a human being. I
Yeah.
love you as a human being. I think you're like amazing and I don't want to lose the connection that we do have, even if I desire more. And past Jaesic, if I hadn't been through the coil that I've just talked
Mm-hmm.
would have stayed and ultimately hurt myself so much worse than the initial break, you know.
Yeah.
um it takes a lot, but because I've celebrated the fact that I've and reflected, so it's not just celebrating, right? It's like you have to reflect, take
Mm-hmm.
time to reflect on what you have done, what where you have come from. You know, if we don't learn history, we're bound to repeat it, right? Another cliche. I swear to God, people get so upset about cliches, and I'm like, there are cliches
It's a
for a reason.
reason.
I mean, not all of them. Stereotypes are one thing, like that's gross, but like the cliches that come up, these idioms that we rely on in society, like they truly do have purpose. There is some truth to most of them. And as I'm getting older, you know, I'm just like, oh, there's another one. Like,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
yup, here we are again. So yeah, I appreciate you talking about celebrating because we need to. And
Yeah.
um celebrating also brings up for me the three C's that love to live by, which
Yeah.
are curiosity, courage, and compassion.
Mm.
Um if I hadn't lit like if I hadn't grounded myself in curiosity for this last, you know, circumstance, I guess we can call it. If I wasn't courageous enough to put myself first, if I wasn't compassionate enough for both him and I in that situation, I could have ruined a friendship. I could have either like in that moment, right? Or prolonged the inevitable of breakage because I wasn't showing up for myself first.
Yeah.
Um, like this is a completely new development for me. I've never like that for me is healthy, you know, like I've never
Yes.
had that healthy, like, oh man, I don't love the taste of a green power smoothie, but here we are and I'm chugging it down and I feel great. Like kind of thing. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, so much. Oh my gosh. Cheers to you too, because like we're doing the hard things. We're doing the
Yeah.
hard things. It's a hard thing to swallow when you're like, oh, this is disgusting, but I know it's good for me. And then eventually what you realize is, oh, so something I heard, I think I want to say it's Joseph Campbell, but the demon you can swallow gives you its power. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So it's like, all right, you're battling a demon. No, don't battle the demon. Swallow the demon. Understand what the lesson is here that you're being presented with and eat it. You know,
No,
make it
truly,
work for
truly.
you.
Yep.
Yeah. My question, we've talked about awareness and being awake. Those are great words, but how the heck does someone get that?
Right. Yeah. And it's, oh gosh, it's bringing back the three C's, especially curiosity.
Yes.
Um, because and willingness. So I feel like willingness and curiosity are maybe synonyms of each other, but they are different, and they go hand in hand for me. You have to be willing. You have to be coachable. Like this is tied into my coaching career. Learning to become a coach changed my life.
Oh my
Not
gosh. Client zero right here. I know. Same. When you become a coach, you're like, oh my God, I have a lot of work to do.
much work to do. Oh God, yeah. So it changed my life, and it taught me, and people come by this realization from other religions, from their cultural backgrounds, and this is part, like, I've come to this realization in my journey as a white privileged person, right? So this is where I get it, and I want to recognize there are other places to get it. But and through my coaching journey specifically, and actually some of the coaching that we were taught to do, and the practices and everything come from Buddhist practice. So I will reference that as well. But to be a coach, you have to be coachable. And they taught us that every circumstance contributes to us in every moment. Every person, everything contributes to us, and including ourselves. We are contributing to ourselves. We're contributing to others always. And it's a matter of being willing to perceive that, being willing to engage in it, being willing to see the truth about it, and then take an authentic action from it. That's that's the basis of my coaching practice. So if you're not willing, if you go through your life, you're like, well, and you're hardened by your circumstances, you're hardened by your your upbringing and your culture and all these things, you're not porous enough. Like, you filled in all the pores of your membrane, like your body is this full membrane, and you're like, nope, nothing can permeate. I refuse to learn. I refuse. This is who I am. This is who I'll always be. This is how the world works. Then yeah, you're not gonna have that awareness. You're not gonna wake up to this new paradigm of thinking, right? But if you let life soften you through the hardship, if you develop compassion, if you develop curiosity and courage, if you allow willingness in your life to learn from your circumstances, to learn from other people, to learn from your mistakes, to learn from yourself, your joys, we are co-creating this experience together. I get tripped up when I think about perception, right? Perception of self, perception of others, perception of reality. Science is proving that every molecule that we interact with is constantly vibrating and moving and shifting, and like, we yes, we can agree that a table is a table. Sure, that's our shared co-truth. But it doesn't have to be a table.
Right, right. And yeah, and I'll go a step further with that. Science has also proven that our perception of things makes the things what they are.
Exactly. And I love, okay, I'm gonna 2 second tangent. I love also the effect of language and culture, like this, there's this like catch-22 chicken and egg situation where language informs culture and culture informs language, and how we use our language, use our sight, like how we perceive things influences what they actually are to ourselves and to others. So when it comes to self-perception and such, like, we are the culmination of perceiving ourselves in a vacuum, perceiving ourselves based on the influence of our environment, perceiving ourselves based on how people perceive us, and then like collectively, like, mixing and mingling all these perceptions, and it gets messy, and it's like, okay, so how do I become aware? How do I become awake? um maybe just being open to the fact that life's a mess also. Like, I don't know if that was the exact point I wanted to make with that, but that's where my brain went now. So
Yeah.
um life is messy. We are constantly co-creating our experience. So being open to being coachable, by our circumstances, by life itself, and yet living in a dichotomy, like living in a dual truth, that we can have truth here and how everything's perceived and how we perceive everything. And then also knowing we are inherently worthy
Mm.
of love, of acceptance. We are inherently already whole and complete. We don't need anybody to complete us. We are fully, like, we are autonomous beings, and we might have been conditioned to believe that we aren't. I know I certainly was, and I'm just grateful it's only taken me until I'll be 30 in January. So I'm almost 30. But it's taken me until this point to have that awareness, to understand that, oh, my conditioning was actually a bunch of lies. I don't
Mm.
need like, I do need community care. We are
Yep.
social beings. I'm not erasing
Mhm.
that fact. But I don't need someone else to complete me. No. And this is that dual reality of loving yourself and knowing your inherent worthiness and validating yourself, and simultaneously needing your community to affirm that, to reflect
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
um like allowing others to be a mirror, and letting you, that's also something I love about being a coach, is I am the mirror. I'm just
Mm.
telling people their worthiness. I'm not giving people their own answers for things in their lives. I am simply holding a container
Mhm.
and being a mirror for them to see for themselves what is true, to see for themselves their best next action and who they are. And of course, like, being compassionate and guiding maybe some of that is necessary, because we don't want people to believe that they're unworthy, because that's factually not true,
Right.
right? um but yeah, so like, allowing that dual reality of knowing your inherent worthiness, knowing your inherent wholeness and completeness, knowing that you are contributing to others and yourself at all times, knowing that you are worthy of being treated with dignity and respect. Like, these are all things that you can work on and build skill in yourself,
Mhm.
with willingness to do so, right? And then also expect that of your community, and wish that for your community, by your community. um yeah, it takes a village. Another cliche. Truly. And it's not just for raising kids, it's for raising fully functional, healthy,
Mm.
amazing adults. We need our village, we need our community.
Yeah. I want to, two things I want to put bookmarks in. One, I want to jump back to when you said willing to perceive, engage, and take authentic action. And I think I'd even like to go back to, okay, someone can, let's give a concrete example. I love concrete examples because it's really helpful. Someone can go, okay, I've perceived the fact that, um, I don't know, I feel unsafe in a circumstance with this kind of person. I've perceived that. And I realize that that's not healthy.
Yep.
Even just arriving at a perception brings awareness.
Right.
So if you go nowhere from here, you are at a step where, oh my gosh, stop, realize that you just had a moment of clarity and awareness. You don't have to engage and take that action now, but you've had a gift given to you where you can say, okay, this is something that I think I would like to revisit. I'm not ready yet, but I had this moment of clarity. So I
Mhm.
think that's really, really, really important. We don't have to go gung ho and jump into the whole process right off the bat, but clarity and recognition are so beautiful and important. And
Oh my
that's
God.
open willingness.
Yes.
The other thing that we share is a background in a culture, a community that was ripe with conditioning. I mean, so much conditioning to the
Oh my
point
God.
where, to the point where I just ended a very, very long term relationship and have come out the other side, literally come out as a gay female. And
Yeah.
I've had people who were in that community with me go, "Oh, well, I'm really confused because how could you have been married and in a heterosexual presenting relationship for so long? I don't understand how you could now say that this is who you are based on that." So, like, let's dissect that a bit. I know what I want to say, but I see your eyes are like listening. So I'm going to let you take the first shot at this.
God. Yeah. So, first, just to briefly touch on your first point. Absolutely agree. This process is a process of healing, of a realignment.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not going to happen overnight.
Yep.
That's why I'm a coach, literally, to help people recognize it's not going to happen overnight. It takes
Yeah.
time, and it's okay. It's okay to take time.
Yeah.
So have patience and compassion and grace for yourself as you're going through this. And awareness creates the observational gap for you to look. And you're
Yes.
right, you don't have to take immediate action. It's a matter of just seeing. You have to see
Mhm.
to believe sometimes. And believing is seeing also, but sometimes it really does take the seeing. And that can be like a wake-up call. Absolutely. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
leaving that one for sure. As far as like the conditioning from our upbringing, um, sometimes our circumstances and that conditioning, not sometimes, frequently, keeps us from ourselves. So
Yes.
you can have people judge from the outside, well, how could you possibly be what you are now if you've always been this one thing? And it really boggles my brain that people can't imagine for themselves like how circumstances change our own self-perception, how circumstances prevent certain perception for ourselves or others. And I have to laugh also, like, because this is an argument that comes up a lot, especially for the queer community, where someone will say they're bisexual or pansexual, and then they're married to someone who's like a cis woman
Yep.
married to a cis man,
Yep.
and people are like, well, you're not really bisexual, you're not really pansexual because you're in this relationship. And like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that our actions define who we are. They don't define who we are. Um, you can be attracted to people and still have a very happy relationship. That's only one part of that attraction, and
Yep.
that's okay.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I like it took me until I was 25 to recognize that I didn't have to be the gender I was shoved into my whole life.
Yeah.
I identify as non-binary, and that's a whole other tangent for another time. But
Yeah.
like I yeah, I didn't know I could be anything else because I was so conditioned to see my box and stay in my box, and that's the only box that I was allowed. Um and and again, I kind of have to laugh at the, I mean, it's hilarity to me to think that the complexity of life, the complexity of the universe can be
Right.
so organized and boxed in with a little ribbon on top. I'm like, that's absurd. It's absurd to me. It's absurd that we would want to like limit the multitudes that we contain as human beings.
I think it's just a human reaction to want to categorize things because
Sure.
categories give us safety to a certain
Yes.
extent. It's so
Oh,
much
yeah.
easier to go, well, this bad, this good. Okay, now I know which direction I want to move. It's not that simple, but
Right, right. And I do I recognize that 100%. I have compassion for it and also some grace for it because like of course, humans are meaning making machines and we want order to make sense of the chaos and proceed with our daily lives. It does tie specific to gender and sexuality and things. It does tie to colonialism and white supremacy. Again, that's another topic for another time. But
oh no,
go ahead.
I was thinking as you were saying that, becoming clear on our gender and what works for us and what feels most authentic to us is not unrelated to relationships. It's fully totally
Fully.
related.
Yes.
It is because this goes back to if I am out of touch with some part of my truth, then I cannot ever enter a relationship where there's full truth present and where there's full trust present.
Thank you. That's repeat the coil cycle
Yeah.
because you're not attached fully to who you are and what your truth is. I think that's a huge part of why it's taken me to this point and why it takes others their entire lives. Like
Yeah.
my mom, she's waking up right now. But it's still I still see her patterns very clearly. There are plenty of people in my life where it's like, because I have the awareness I have now from my own journey, I see other people and I'm like, oh my God, not to be prescriptive or anything, but like I see this because I lived through
Yeah.
it. You are not attached completely to who you are. And that's okay. Like we don't have to judge it. It's just a matter of, so how do we empower each other to wake up? How do we give each
Mhm.
other the support we need to find all parts of ourselves and start living truly authentically? And that, gosh, there's also like a small thing to say about not judging the process of, like, when you're in the cycle, when you think you know who you are and you think, like, I'm still developing too. Like it's not like I'm
Yes.
fully,
Yep. We will
like I have
all
all the
always still be
answers.
developing.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like the
Yeah,
human journey.
constantly. Yes. So like it's not like I'm trying to say I have all the answers for myself or other people. It's just
Yes.
like, when you're in it, sorry, when you're out of it and you're looking back, it's important to not, like I said before, like it was hard for me to not self-loathe or like look back and hate on my former self,
Yep.
because I was just so lost. I was so lost, not attached to who I was. And I was fighting for my voice. I was fighting for my spine. But it took so long, and now looking back, it's like, I can only have compassion for that person because she brought me to where I am today. Um, and I thought I was doing what was best for me. Maybe not all the time, but most of the time.
Mhm.
And I thought I was being authentic, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but waking up at 25 and recognizing, oh, the gender thing. And the gender thing led to well, sexuality first, I would say, but it took me the right community and circumstances to see new information reflected back to me so I could like
Mhm.
bounce off my identity and see what stuck and what felt good and felt right. So 25 was, the non-binary thing. And then that led to neurodivergence. I was finally open to learning about how my brain works and why I'm so different from other people.
Mm.
Turns out I'm autistic. Who like, and combining with my ADHD diagnosis at 23, it's like, oh, I'm starting to put together all the missing pieces and understand, like, I have not been connected to who I am because I've been denying myself my truth based on what other people say I can
Mm.
and cannot be. And that led
Mm.
to accepting my disability status after that. So like,
Yeah.
opening one door, and you walk out and there's path, and like, oh my God, it's just one thing after another. And this again can take time. This can take an entire lifetime to realize, to come to understanding and acceptance of. So yeah, I definitely wanted to recognize, like, we don't need to judge the process.
Yeah. 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 Just be open to it. Yeah, for sure. I drew a little really terrible diagram, so pardon it, but it's Baymax. But
Oh,
this is how I talk about remembering ourselves. So when we are
mm,
dismembered, when part of our truth is cut off from the rest of us, it's like having your arm chopped off. It's
yes.
still there, it still exists. But when we remember ourselves, literally to put a member of our body back
Um,
together,
yep.
then we start to see the wholeness of the experience of who we are and go, oh my gosh, I was always this whole person.
Yep.
Those whole pieces of me have never not existed. I was just cut off from being able to either acknowledge them or love them or
Yep.
use them or whatever the case may be. And for me, that's what my coming out and my sharing my whole self in relationship now has been. And it's not just intimate relationship. First and foremost, it's familial relationship. Hey, this is me. Let me reintroduce who I am to you. And then friendships, and it just grows from there. But there's a
Yeah.
whole process of like having compassion, like you said, compassion again for ourselves and putting ourselves back together.
Hmm.
And why I think this is the most critical part of authentic relationships is because, like I said before, it would be impossible for me to enter a truly, fully open, committed, authentic relationship and not be aware of who I am as a person.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so I mean, and it's going to take a lot of compassion and non-judgment for me to love the person who I was in relationship with enough to say, that's not me, this is me.
Right.
That
Yep.
that is gut wrenching. I've been through the process.
Yes.
But you can't not honor and fully love yourself. I mean, I guess you could, but it would lead to an unfulfilling, kind of spliced up, lukewarm type
Yep.
life. And a lot of
Yep.
people are living that way. A
Yep.
lot of people, I think it's because I know personally the thought of how terrifying this process was going to be held me from going through the process for a very long time.
Right.
The
Yep.
fear of the thing is always, always worse than the thing itself. Always. But the only way you can find out is by doing the thing. So
Yo,
I could sit here all
unfortunately.
day and say, trust me, it's so much better now that I've gone through it. But the person who's staring that down is going, you can tell me whatever you want to tell me, but that looks terrifying.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, as you were talking about, entering into a truly like authentic and genuine relationship with someone, like without knowing ourselves, we can't do that ultimately because our relationships are the sums of us and the sums of our counterparts coming together, right? So, and maybe even more so than just the sums, right? Like we are greater than the sums of our parts, kind of another cliche.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but that being said, like I also have this visual of I'll borrow again from my coaching education. We talk about the hero's journey, right? And so you can have a hero's journey going along on a straight line, and then you drop off of it because of repeated pattern or what have you. You're not being authentic in your actions. And you're down there for a little bit, and then you're like, something wakes you up, and you're like, oh crap, I gotta get back on my journey. And you just pop back up to the original path, right? And this little box drop, like little hole that we dig, kind of, again, nothing to judge, it's just something to notice and to take action from. But like, as you're describing, remembering ourselves, right? I think of how our conditioning throughout our lives can condition us away from who we actually are and keep us wearing masks after masks and living a life that dulls our light because it's not aligned, right, to who we are. So as we're waking up, we're taking off these masks and we're coming back to our hero's journey. And if we don't do that, I can see like being off the hero's path, and then I mean we're still a hero and still whole and complete and still all those things, right? But it's just not like aligned to who we are authentically
Yes.
are. So when you meet someone on the unaligned path, you go off in this jagged path and you're not heading true north like you're trying to on your aligned
Mm.
hero's journey. And it's going to be rockier, it's going to be more challenging probably, and might end in some nasty places and you have to dig yourself out of it, right? So I'm just seeing like this very straight line for the hero's journey when you're all aligned, and then this like ragged path with
Mhm.
somebody if you're not aligned to who you are.
Yeah.
Just as another visual, I guess. um so yeah, I really appreciate that because like for me, I don't know, I guess I am learning personally in my in my personal journey, that I don't want relationship that isn't completely aligned to my values and who I am and is not symbiotic completely. Um, which is why it was difficult to choose the healthy option with this past love interest, but I did it because I'm learning again to prioritize my well-being. Um, and I guess that's scary. I've cried a lot over like being alone, I suppose. Where like I know I have love in my community and my family, and I'm very grateful
Yeah.
for those those connections and relationships. But we dream of having a relationship or more of, I'm also polyamorous. So I have the opportunity to have many connections, but I still dream of having like this anchor partnership where I build a life with somebody. We have pets together, we live in the same house and carry life on like that. Um, and I know I'm young still, but I'm kind of terrified. I'm kind of terrified. And I have to be real about that with myself as well, just of growing old without having that partnership. But then I simultaneously remind myself, and we talked about this before, where show up for yourself and the universe shows up for you. I truly believe that we are the universe inherently like experiencing itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the more you choose yourself, watch what happens, watch and it might not be a short turnaround, it could take a long time, but having faith that you are never wrong for choosing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And the more that we can drive home this idea of, coupled, uncoupled, whatever your case may be, if you are willing to fully love yourself, fully accept and embody your truth,
Yes.
and become the thing that you're searching for. Like, I just say this over and over, but it's like, who would I want to be in a relationship with? Let me go become that person. Because when I find that person, they're not going to want to be with me if I'm not that person. So, I mean, people make these great lists of this is everything I want in a partner.
Yeah, but who are you?
But then they don't work on themselves and figure out
Right.
who they are. So cool. When you meet that person, how are they going to see you and go, oh, that's my person?
Right. Right. Ah, Bridget, I love that so much. Thank you for that. That's a gift. Really, because I think I've had perspective on this, but I've never quite put words and like solidified that concept of, no, I have to become who I want first, because not just because, like that's a full sentence,
Period.
that's a full concept,
full
period.
Stop. Yep.
Just full stop. Yep. But also, if I truly desire that connection with someone to build a life with, and they deserve that? Don't they deserve what you're seeking for yours? And people love each other. We've talked, or people know about like love languages and everything. People love differently and accept love differently, and that's valid and beautiful. And we should definitely take that into account. But if you're not who you want yourself to, if you don't become who you'd want someone else to be for yourself, then how are you going to show up like fully conscious and available to what that person would want for themselves? Like motivate each other. And that's ultimately what I would seek, is we don't have to be arrived at that final destination, but I think on the journey there, like we want to be committed to the journey there. Yes. And when we do meet our people, we want to elevate each other to reach that end goal of like ultimately arriving, and which it's possible. I don't think we arrive. I think we just get closer and closer and closer, and that's enough.
Yeah. I think we're in a school. Life is a school. It's like a soul development school. And I think that you're laughing. I think that it would be a beautiful thing to be with someone for whom you could say, I want to love you to your highest potential. A lot of people couple up and they're like, don't change because I love this version of you. And if you change, then I'm out because I'm scared. No, I'd like to be with someone who wants to grow and change and evolve and always continually progress towards that higher version of themselves. I want to love you there, because today I'm going to love you this well. And tomorrow, if you grow, I'm going to love you that well. And the next day, I'm going to love you that well. And if we're doing this together, then what we get to do is not just grow together, but we get to amplify one another.
Oh, amplify.
That's the thing that happens. Yeah, it's like if I'm this dampened version of myself and you're this dampened version of yourself and we enter a relationship, we're going to dampen one another.
Right.
But if I'm constantly seeking to up level, to grow, to just become more of what I'm capable of becoming, then when we come together, that's what's going to happen. There's an
Yes.
amplification that's going to occur. And
Yes.
that's what I'm aiming for. That's what I want.
Yeah. Oh, snaps to that. Yes, please sign
Poetry.
me up. I know, genuinely. Oh, it's so good. So good. Yeah,
Mm,
truly.
yeah. So here's something we talked about before, and I don't want to let you off without talking about this because this is so critical, especially to
Mm.
someone who I'm an adrenaline junkie. I seek like that rush.
Oh my
Um,
God.
I
Yep.
think when we find ourselves in a securely attached relationship, something that can occur is we'll go, oh, this is odd. My body's not dysregulated. I'm not sure what to do about this, but it feels a little bit boring, vanilla, mundane. And I was taught that that's not how love feels, right?
Yep.
So, what do we do with that?
Absolutely. Oh my God. Well, first, I would love to pay attention or bring attention rather to, okay, so as you were speaking, it brought me back to what I was taught love was as a child, based on my parents' modeling, based on media that I divulged, like, or that's the wrong word, digested, whatever. Just all the stimulus around me as I was being raised. And yeah, that attached me to anxious attachment. That attached me to having a dysregulated system and anticipating needs and being the fixer. And if I'm not feeling that like buzzy, kind of queasy feeling in my body, then I must not be excited or really in love with whoever I'm with. Because that's what I was conditioned to, not maybe purposefully, of course, but like just the circumstances produce that in me. And so when we go through the process of unlearning these things, we're actually healing our relationship with our inner child first.
Mm,
Um,
yes.
and and to do that actively was with the people that we surround ourselves with, we have to seek peace. It feels wrong, if you've ever been in a trigger warning for like relationship toxicity and abuse, but if you've ever been, I mean, I've been in several abusive relationships, and I think I stayed in it at all and definitely longer than I should have at all, because I was convinced that, well, this is how love feels, and
Yep.
B, I can fix it. I can fix it. I
Mm,
just have to stay a little longer. I can
love
fix
a
it.
good
And
project.
right? But that's my inner child screaming for love,
Yeah.
screaming for it.
Yeah.
And always looking in the wrong places because I never really had it in the right place to begin with. And then that's not a reflection on who my parents are or
Yep.
were. It's just a matter of life circumstances having that effect on me. So, that being said, like now that I have been recognizing and been awake to, that's like that nervous system response, that sympathetic nervous system response of like,
Yeah.
I'm activated, I'm heightened, I'm on all the time. This is what love feels like. Um, Now that I know that that's not true, that that's not what love is, my goal is to seek peace, to find the people, friendships, uh, family, intimate relationships that produce a calmness that allow me space to just exist and breathe, and be authentic in. I don't fear judgment. I, parasympathetic nervous system set in. That response is more present than the sympathetic. In fact, the life circumstances, of course, can cause the sympathetic, where it's like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. and then finding the people who actually regulate you, and not in a codependent way, but in a way that empowers you to regulate yourself with them by your side. It's different. I've learned this difference actually through living with my roommate. Because I didn't know, this is just a reflection of my history. I didn't know I could live with someone without being codependent. Because I've mostly lived with intimate partners since college. Um, and living with my roommate, I've recognized, oh my God, I can have a really bad day, ask for a hug, a squish, which is what we call them, and be regulated and breathe with my roommate, and then go about my day. I don't owe them anything. Um, I don't have to expect a specific response. Like, it's wild. It is recreating the neuron pathways in my brain, telling me, oh, this is what love feels like. This is what independence in love feels like also, which is really important for
Yeah.
me in particular, as a very like codependent, anxious attachment styled person. At least I have been. I'm learning to heal that now. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's wild, waking up to that and seeking peace first, and not in like the deflective avoidant way.
Right.
That is also a difference, but in the way where you feel like you can trust the person to not re-trigger anything, to re-trigger that nervous system response, and then also once things are regulated, to not hold that over you, to not lord that over you, to not expect a certain favor or behavior later from you.
Yeah.
um like, love should be free of manipulation, essentially. That's what I'm getting at. um and conscious like, also manipulation gets a bad rap because we manipulate people all the time, based on our behaviors, and we manipulate ourselves.
That's problem
Like,
number one. Yeah, because we're so used to taking it from ourselves and going, no, this is what I want. I'm sure it is. This is definitely what and we're abandoning ourselves in that decision. So how
oh,
could
oh,
we
that.
yeah, a
Sorry. Yeah.
self-abandonment is a big thing that I've been on lately, a big kick. But it can be conscious and unconscious, and that's the
Yes.
danger. Is
Yes.
that like how do we like I think this is fascinating since I am a whole person. How is it possible that there are parts of me that I am unconsciously abandoning? Like if I am one whole person, then where did that other part go if it's still part of me? So there are ways to access it, but it
Yeah.
takes some like neurological hacks to get there.
I was gonna say, like, we have resources depending on your background, depending on your, obviously, like, there's privilege involved with some of those resources, like with therapy, right? Like, that's
Yep.
expensive, and isn't easily accessible. But I do think mindfulness techniques you can learn for free online. Talk with your friends about their journeys. Like, there are ways to access certain parts of yourself, and at the same time, I also am a firm believer that we don't go through what we go through until we're ready to learn from it, until we're ready
Mhm.
to look. It's not linear time, okay? Like,
Yep.
it's confusing to think about, but I know I've gone through the hardships that I've gone through to produce the person that I am right now.
Yep.
Um, and that's part conscious and unconscious, because I've consciously chosen to allow lessons in.
Mhm.
Um, and I think if we're not fully integrated, like you're saying, there, like, you are a whole person, we are whole people, but there are still parts of us that we don't access. Maybe they're repressed, maybe they've never come to the surface yet because of the right circumstances haven't produced that opportunity to integrate. So it's like, again, coming back to the willingness of, let everyday life, all circumstances, be your coach,
Mhm.
and allow that integration, um when it pops up. uh like, I'm fully, I'm developing a relationship with my somatic experience, where I allow feelings to be in my body, and instead of ignoring them or repressing them, actually engage like with them, sit with them, recognize where in my body that is showing up, try to associate that with a circumstance, with an emotion. And we literally as humans have to feel somatically, we have to feel the sensation before we can work it out of our bodies, work it out of our systems. I'm a huge movement nerd. I know we took it out of my bio, but body shaker, movement maker kind of thing. I there's this embodiment revolution that's happening right now where we are like there are so many practitioners out there now. Shay Charmaine, I think is their last name. Shoot, I should have looked that up. I'm sorry. But one of the humans in my life, who has brought this revolution into my life has really changed, like revolutionized, haha, the way that I experience emotion and the way that I allow space to process and let go. Um, because we are mind, body, and soul. Like that also is a phrase for a reason. Um, and I've been working for the last 3 years so hard on my mind to body bridge, because of my conditioning, my disability, like all these things. I've had a break. I've had a complete gap between my mind and body. And now that I'm integrating those things more intimately, and successfully, I would say I'm at a place where I'm much more comfortable being in my body and experiencing what it experiences and honoring it. Oh man. Like to listen, and then it's another thing to do action based on what you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And also, I don't want to minimize the part about when we've been through traumatic events, especially that affect our bodies, it feels really unsafe to get into our bodies.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's why it takes so much concerted effort and time to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
Um, because of course you don't want to be in a painful situation, and your body is its own brain. Like our gut has its own cells that interpret things. Literally all of our cells feel things. Like science is coming out. There's so much research coming out about how on a molecular, like cellular level, our
Mhm.
body retains information,
Yeah.
retains memory, retains and processes on its own. Like it has its own way to deal with things. And our minds, we can tap into that. Great. And be a whole system to heal, to move on, to learn. Um, and it's scary, it's terrifying, it's absolutely terrifying, especially if you're trying to do this on your own. So hold space for that. If those who are listening, if you are going on this journey, it's okay to feel scared, it's okay to not know what to do. I highly recommend, just from my own journey, and if this resonates, great. If not, that's okay. But I started really, the first thing that really clicked for me outside of like my coaching experience, like learning at school, has been reading the book You Are Here by the Buddhist monk, the late Buddhist monk. Unfortunately, he passed last year. Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yep.
It's all about breath and loving all parts of ourselves as if we are watering a garden, or loving on a small child or a best friend, or like, just he offers a lot of analogy, that really helped me visualize my experience and help me bridge that gap between mind and body. And something that really also clicked for me in dealing with my trauma specifically, and future tripping, which I do, or I used to do so much of. Now I do a whole lot less. But it's been 3 years and I'm still struggling. So just, again, patience, grace, and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
But he says something along the lines of, you are only truly alive when you are living in the present. People who live in the past and the future are walking zombies, because there's only right now. Your corporal form is in a linear timeline because of the way that the universe works, the way that we conceptualize how it works, the way that we age, right? Our bodies are stuck present moment. And if we're not attached to our bodies in the present moment, where the heck are we? How are we actually living? Make heaven on earth by being present to every moment, being mindful and embody yourself. So that, yeah, I don't actually know if I answered the question.
I don't remember what the question was, but that was freaking amazing. And I love where we ended. So this is fantastic. Put neurospicy people in a room and let them have a conversation. And let's see what happens. Beautiful.
Truly.
Beautiful. We're the only people who are going to follow where we're going right now, but it's all good. Oh, friend, this is so much fun. I'm going to reference that book in the notes so people can find it if they're curious. And if there's anyone else who you mentioned, mentors or anyone that you would like me to put a reference to in the notes, I'll make sure we do that.
That'd be great.
Yeah, but I just want to know, how can people get in touch with you and connect? What's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So I have a few things you can do. If you want to just read more about me, what I do have a website. It's queerculturecoaching.com. You can contact me at contact@qccoaching.com. I have a blog, queercult.org. That's a whole other part of me, and it's not as active as I would like it, but hey, it's there. I also have a few Facebook pages. Queer Cult has its own blog page, and Queer Culture Coaching has its own thing. I am building. I've been just over a year now, I think, doing this stuff, but I'm really grateful for all the opportunities I've had, and I'm really just excited, like this kind of work. Like, Bridget, I so appreciate you inviting people into these conversations and sharing it with the world, because this is how we have community support. This is how we collectively wake up. This is how we collectively grow. And sharing, and like I said, sharing stories is so important, because that's our humanity. That's how we connect with other human, like in our humanity. And yeah, so thank you for having me. Otherwise, I think I named all the
and they'll go in the notes. They'll definitely go in the show notes, so I'll make it easy. But yeah, I think you asked earlier, how do we empower people? Because this is so important, and this is how we do it. Honest, vulnerable, courageous conversations, committing to doing the work ourselves. And it's not that we need to take people along for the ride. All we need to do is just be ourselves, just be the mirror. So you're doing the work, I'm doing the work, we're doing the work. And I hope that if this impacts one person to become more themselves, then it was worth having this conversation. So
1,000%.
Thank you for showing up and being present and being committed to this.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure talking with you. I literally, we could do this for hours.
Always, I know.